Can you guys hear me okay now?
Yep, you're good.
Thank you.
And you are now live.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. This is a call to order for the special meeting of the Bridgeport Board of Education on Thursday, July 27, 2023 at 6 p.m. And this meeting is done via Teams, but also it's streaming live on YouTube. At this moment, we're going to get started. The first item is public comment. I did speak to Tim prior to the meeting. He confirmed that no one has signed up for public comment concerning this agenda item. So we will move on. The next item is discussion and possible action to begin the process of filling the vacant Board of Education seat left by Michael Macaron. What I'll do is we'll start off. I see you, Mr. Sokolovic. Just give me 1 second. For anyone that is viewing this, we have legal representation here to answer a few questions. We have Mr. Dugas from Bertram and Moses, and then we're waiting for our city attorney to join us. At this moment, I'll open up the floor for board members to express their thoughts, concerns on the process of filling this vacant seat. The first person I do see that has risen her hand is Mr. Sokolovic. Go right ahead, Joe.
Yeah, first I'd like to talk about the switch over from the 2-year seat to appointed until the next election. I understand that's in the city charter now, but we as a board have been operating on the precedents that was set back in the 2017 election when there was a two-year seat at an election and it was run. And now we advertise these seats as ending with the next municipal election as per the precedent. And nobody expected them to stay till 2 years until it was brought up. And it looks like it is rightfully in the charter. So I want to know how the city attorney in the last election wrote a letter to the Secretary of State saying there should be another election, that a 2-year election, that John Weldon could not hold his seat, that there must be a 2-year election to fill that. How that error was made, because as far as I know, the city charter has not changed since like 1996 or 1998. Because that election actually, it may seem moot at this point, but that election affected a lot of things, because had that election not happened, Taylor Robinson would be sitting on the board in the place of Chris Taylor. So had a big effect on the board. And if there was a mistake, I think it should be explained, because I don't know how the heck that happened.
So what I'm gonna say too, Joe, is because there isn't the city attorney to answer that specific question, we could hold off just to give that city attorney opportunity to speak on that, because that is a concern, and it's going to be a concern based off of what advertisement we put out to advertise the seat. And I believe, if I can speak for the entire board, it is our concern. We want to make sure we're telling the candidate what they're going to look forward to in the next, if it is 2 years, 4 years, whoever term they're going to be completing, that they are aware that this is the entirety of it. But I do think, just from that conversation, that, it needs to be clear and come from the source itself. And I think the city attorney should be able to speak on that. The other thing that was brought to our attention as well, and this is why we have Mr. Dugas with us today, is that Mr. Sokolovic switched parties, and because now there isn't not an even balance, but there isn't a right portion of members for Democrat versus Republican that sit on the board, that puts this specific advertisement a little in a tight space, because we only have a certain amount of time to find a Republican to fill the seat if Mr. Sokolovic's position doesn't, lapse by August. Mr. Sokolovic, what does it say for you?
I vest August 8th. And just a quick point of information, it doesn't have to be a Republican that's selected for the seat.
Okay.
It should be, at least the last go around, has to be any other party or unaffiliated other than Democrat.
Okay. So Mr. Dugas, and then I'll come to you, Ms. Baptiste Perez. What are your thoughts, or the best way you think we should handle that?
You could give me a second, Mr. Anastasio.
Oh, you're muted. Okay, Ms. Baptiste Perez?
No, I was going to point out that it is not a Republican seat. It is a minority party or unaffiliated voter.
I stand corrected. Apologies. Mr. Traber, saw your hand is up.
Yes, while I was waiting for my laptop to power down and back up again because I was having problems getting on, I sent another email in the thread that we were exchanging in the last half hour to an hour. When we were trying to figure out the answer over this past weekend through the Secretary of State's office, we were told by a woman named Heather in the Secretary of State's office, and I don't off the top of my head know what her title is, but she is the person in the Secretary of State's office that deals with Bridgeport elections. She said unequivocally that unless there's something in the charter, like the charter overrules the laws of Connecticut, the state law, on whether or not I would have to run this fall, and the charter says no, I fulfilled the term. The charter also, the state law also says that Joe's seat remains a minority party seat, regardless of whether he changes parties or not. And she was unequivocal about it. So I would like the lawyers to check that for us. I'm not asking you to take my word for it, but she just did not hesitate to say, unless the charter says that change of affiliation by Joe, that remains a Democratic seat, Mr. Macarones. And so there's no issue at all. Then that begs the further question that I raised earlier about if he doesn't vest until August 8th and we fill the seat before that, can we fill it with a Democrat? But the way she laid it out, which my daughter reminded me of 20 minutes ago when she picked up my granddaughter, that was unequivocal, that Joe's seat is determined by what he was when he was elected, and it stays that way until he's elected again.
Thank you. I'll come back, Ms. Baptiste, for Mr. Benahan. You want to add to that comment?
Yes, and my question, it's a question or a comment, whatever, how to like it. Why this coming now when when they resign? We never go through this. We going through regular, we talk about this, we talk about that, we go the process, and that's it. Now why this situation's coming out? That's what I want to know.
I will speak on it. I think clarity needed to be made because we have to basically give direction of what we're going to advertise out to the public for the seat that we're advertising for Mr. Macaron. So we have two board members that are in a position that they're about to either participate in the upcoming election because we told them, based off the information that we received, that they had to run again for their seat. So we want to make sure that if that is true, that the candidate that we select is aware of the pros and cons of taking this seat. We wanted to make sure that was clear. So that's why I invited legal to speak to that, just to make sure it's said publicly, because there obviously things were said and, charter revisions and whatever, not charter revisions, but charter updates, the Secretary of State, we want to make sure it's clear and it's not coming off of anything we're saying. Does that make sense?
Yeah, all right. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Ms. Baptiste Perez, do you want to go or you want to hear what Mr. Dugas says? I can let you go.
Well, no, I'm ready to speak.
Okay.
Plus the information that was shared to the board today via email with prior decisions shared with Attorney Dugas, because the content that Mr. Traber shared, that the seat you were elected to is the seat you're holding. So in the example of Mr. Sokolovic, based on the information he sent today, I want to know, was it sent to the attorneys for further analysis and not just shared amongst the board? And then the second part that I'm sharing with the board is I read it, and it goes along with what Mr. Traber said, is that he holds a minority seat regardless of if he changes his party. Because tomorrow, the interpretation, you can be a libertarian, you can be a Green Party, you can go back to Working Families Party, but you are holding a minority seat. And so I'd be interested in hearing Attorney Dugas's interpretation of that, because that seems consistent with the SEDC case that was sent to us, as well as the statute.
Mr. Dugas?
Yeah, and I apologize. I was dealing with Mr. Anastasi, so I didn't hear much of that. And he's coming on now, so when we give it a minute, if you want to, if you wouldn't mind rephrasing the question, because again, I was trying to get Mark squared away.
Okay, I see him. He's functioning? Can you hear us?
Mark, can you hear us?
I can now. Thank you. Appreciate your help. Apologies to everybody. I had technical difficulties. I guess my
No worries.
with the city, we're hitched up to Zoom more than we are to Microsoft Teams, so I apologize.
No worries. Ms. Baptiste, you want to restate your question?
Yes. Earlier today, a board member shared with us a few documents regarding interpretation of a board member holding a minority seat and then switching to the Democratic Party. And in that decision, it stated that the prior member who switched from a working family party seat to a Democratic seat in the middle of their term still held a minority seat. And so my first question was that case sent to you as well as Attorney Dugas for further interpretation? And
It was not sent to me. Maybe, Mark, you're familiar with it. I'm not.
I'm not sure, assuming what's the name of the case?
Yeah, I think this is something that if anything's going to be shared of legal, that needs legal interpretation should always be forwarded to the appropriate attorneys. If you're able to do so right now, Ms. Brown, maybe you can forward that over to them so that we
Listen,
get that. But
I just want to
I'm
be
gonna look.
clear. I'm not saying nobody sent it to me. I haven't seen it. But regardless, I mean, Floyd and I did speak, or Attorney Dugas and I spoke earlier today, and I think we both looked up certain statutes and charter provisions that seem to apply to this issue. It sounds like you're talking about a question of whether 9167A and subsection G, I believe, would address the issue of the look back provision. And if, unless there's something we're not aware of in this case, if someone changes party affiliation, they remain in that particular party for 90 days, after which they are deemed to no longer be a member of that party. Now, obviously, if you're unaffiliated, that's a different scenario. But if you're, say, a Republican and you want to join the Democratic Party, there's a look back provision that's again under 9-167A subsection G. But since I'm coming to this conversation late, if that's not the question that's being asked, I apologize.
I just forwarded to you both in your emails. And this is just the documentation provided by Mrs. Sokolovic. So yes, Mr. Traber, go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Anastasi, to follow up on what Ms. Baptiste Perez was saying, there are essentially a couple of key questions that we need to. Mr. Benahan asked earlier, why are we in this conundrum now? And it's because there had been this belief that, appointees to the board in midterm were required in the next cycle of elections to run. And now we've learned just this past week, frankly, just this week, that you're not. You're based on the charter, which trumps the state law, and this is seeking advice from the Secretary of State's office. And this came up because I was planning on running this term, because I had been told when I applied for the position that I had to run this fall. And so then I found out from Heather, who oversees Bridgeport's elections in the Secretary of State's office, that the city charter trumps the state law, and I serve out the remainder of the term that I was appointed to fill. And so I run in 2025. And that then begged the question of, with the opening that came up this week, what do we do with that? And what other things have we done? Let me finish so then it expanded as we looked at it, because we wanted to make sure that we did this next opening correct. Mr. Macarone submitted his resignation this week. And then the complication of Mr. Sokolovic changing parties, which would become effective August 8th. And so we could actually fill this position before it became effective. But the same woman, Heather, and I'm referring to her because I'm hoping that somebody, either you or Mr. Dugas, would confirm this with them, not take my word for it because I'm not a lawyer, that the state law says that Mr. Sokolovic's position remains a minority party position, regardless of what he chooses to do with regard to his personal affiliation, because he was elected as a minority party person on the board. And so you can look at the case law, which Mr. Sokolovic shared with us and Ms. Brown just shared with you all, to see what that shows, which Ms. Baptiste Perez just said she thinks it supports that statement. But we want to have you all look at it and reaffirm what we should do with regard to filling this position, because we want to post it and ask for applicants next week so that we can fill it in a timely manner.
Okay, I'll go first, and then Floyd certainly is more than welcome to weigh in and encouraged to do so. First off, what you say is certainly generally true, that the charter, because 10-219 of the state statute says it unless the charter otherwise provides. Now, there's a wrinkle to that, and the wrinkle to that is that when the vacancy is filled not by the board within the 30 days provided, but rather when the 30 days lapses and the mayor exercises his authority under 7107 to fill a vacancy, which has occurred on various occasions over the years with the Board of Ed. If the mayor makes the appointment by the plain language of 7107, then the vacancy only gets filled until the next municipal election. So the first determinant here is the person vacating the position. Was that a position that they were elected to? Was that a position that the board filled, or was that a position that the mayor appointed someone to? Because that's the first aspect of the inquiry. And I don't know if we're talking about one or more than one positions at this point.
Well, this will be the fourth this year, and they were all filled. They will presumably all be filled by the board.
Okay, then if that's the case, then I think we don't have the 7107 wrinkle where when the mayor steps in, his power is limited because the state statute can be read consistently with 10-219. His power is not set forth in the charter. It's a statutory power. So you read the two statutes together and that would come into play. So I think the first answer here is that if all four vacancies were filled by the board, then they all serve out whatever the term is, whether it ends this fall or in 2 more years. The second question, the more interesting question, I guess, that you're getting into, because based strictly on state statute, I would say 9167A subsection G would say, and reading that together with the city charter, which says, the charter says, if a vacancy arises for any reason, the remaining members shall elect a new member to serve. The person so elected shall be a resident elector and a member of the same political party as the member vacating such office. It doesn't say this a member of the same political party to which the person was elected. It says to the party that they're affiliated with. Now, if somebody changes their affiliation, you can't do that, as you pointed out, sir. You can't do that overnight. You have this 90-day wait period. So if the resigning party resigned within the time frame that allows the board to still appoint without going past the 30 days and thereby having it lapse to the mayor, then all things being equal, unless there's a case that you're sending around that might change that, I would say based on the statute, if you wait until that 90 days has lapsed and you still have standing to fill it, then you could fill it with the affiliation that the person, or they're no longer charged back to whatever party they were when they were elected. But I say all of that without reading what supposedly was just sent around, and I'm trying to see if.
And I would agree with.
Oh, I'm sorry. may I respond to that, Mr. Dugan?
Yeah, go ahead, Mr.
The
Traver.
person that vacated the position is a Democrat. That's unquestioned. Mr.
Okay.
Macarone vacated the position on Monday. He's a Democrat. So doesn't the charter say that that position should be filled with a Democrat? Period.
Yes. Now, the question is whether, I mean, that's the way I read 9167A, that he resigned, his position was Democrat. You cannot put somebody in there who was a Democrat, I'm sorry, was something other than a Democrat within the last 90 days of your appointment. If somebody was not a Democrat, but became a Democrat recently, and you still have that window, then you could put that person in. Floyd, I think you wanted to add something, or?
No, I was going to say I agree with all that. And the only other thing we've got to keep in mind, which I don't think is an issue with what we're talking about, is the minority representation rule. You can't have more than 6 Dems no matter what.
That's always another wrinkle. You're correct. And that's also in 9167A, and that's subsection A1, where for a 9-member board, it says 6. But I think both Floyd and I have spoken without having occasion to, I'm looking at my inbox to see if I got something. It may have gone to my spam file. I don't have anything. If somebody sent something around, it hasn't come in either my live or my spam, but I have to say I'm having, so, okay, something just came in 6:20, okay, from Bobby Brown to Floyd and myself, okay.
So we'll give you a second, Mr. Anstey, to read that. Joe, and then Ms. Baptiste Perez. Go ahead, Joe. And then Mr. Traver.
Yeah, the case, right, I think the most pertinent case was Karen Jackson in Bridgeport, which was used as precedent to decide the last time this happened on the board. Whereas, currently the facts remain at this very moment, there are 6 registered Democrats on the board. Myself included. But my rights do not vest until the 8th. So the main question is, by appointing another Democrat, we will be in balance 7. This question was answered before in the 2019 resignation of Dennis Bradley, when I also changed parties to help the opposition to the administration to win the election. And the fallback of that was when Mr. Bradley resigned, I was in fact vested in my 90 days. And the decision then was that we had to elect anybody but a Democrat.
Well,
Because you went over 7? You went over 6?
Correct. And now if we put a Democrat in now after I vest, we will be over 6 again.
my understanding, sir, if I recall correctly over the years, is that we cannot prevent somebody from changing their affiliation. If the board were to fill that position before your 90 days has expired, then
There's no problem.
That's right. They would have to fill it before you vest, for the reason that we can't preclude you from dropping your affiliation or switching parties, but the board can't be hamstrung in the interim. So depending if the board wants to put a Democrat in there, which frankly, it would seem they're obligated to do since a Democrat vacated the position, it would be best if that's done before the 8th. If it's done beyond the 8th, then we're into a whole nother series of questions and issues. Floyd, do you agree with that?
I agree 100%.
Okay, Ms. Baptiste Perez and Mr. Traver.
Okay, and so if we're discussing timeline, Mr. Macarone resigned officially on July 24th. It gives us exactly 14 days before vesting happens on August 8th. So if the board decides that it's will that we want to place a Democrat in the Democratic seat, we have 14 days to do so. And by August 8th, that's when the whole additional other set of rules will kick in. My question for I'm sorry, I'm gonna go by first names. Mike and Floyd. Oh, Mark. Is it Mark?
Mark, yeah.
Mark, yes, sure.
There were too many mics on the board. But it's a question of marketing. How would we be able to market this seat? I guess we can only market it if we really have a timeline in place. So if we're dedicated to replacing it with a Dem, we should market it as a Democratic seat. But if we're interested in marketing it as a minority party seat, then we would adjust to the timeline where we're in compliance to stop or make the decision for the vacancy ourselves.
Agreed.
Well, the first thing I think you want to do is confirm, and Mr. Sokoloff would be the one that would have the best knowledge of, and I think he's represented that he becomes vested on August 8th. So assuming that's correct, and the board's 30 days does not expire before August 8th, arguably it's somewhat within the board's control as to which way to proceed. You happen to be in that sweet spot where you can probably do it either way. But if you want to put a Democrat in there, which frankly, I'm not here to tell you what to do, other than that would be consistent with the language of the charter, which says you fill it with somebody from the party that's vacating, then you would need to market it and act promptly. But I don't know that there's anything that can force you to act. I think unless somebody got a mandamus action in court, which is not going to happen, you would have it within your power to go however far beyond the 8th, as long as it's still within your 30 days. And I don't know, the 24th, you said the resignation became effective, so you're talking about probably a couple of weeks beyond the 8th. But you would, at that juncture, I'm thinking, without having fully delved into it, it does raise the specter of whether Mr. Sokoloff's resignation would preclude you. And Floyd and I probably need to do a little more research on that, because there's always the potential for gamesmanship. And I'm not in any way suggesting that's going on here. But if people can flop their party affiliation after being elected, then conceivably they could impact the makeup of the board. So it's possible, I don't know as I sit here, but it's possible there's some language out there in a case somewhere that says if a party changes affiliation despite 9167A, that change of affiliation will not trump the charter, which says you have to fill it with a Democrat. Because again, this is very similar to the earlier question. You now have a conflict between the charter and the state statute. So it raises the specter again of whether that state statute 9167A is trumped by the charter in a situation where the issue is created by virtue of a switch of one of the active members. So I'm not sure Floyd and I would be totally comfortable answering that tonight, as opposed to maybe doing a little bit of research and maybe making a phone call or two. But I think you understand the issue, that there might be something unique here again because of that conflict between the plain language of the charter and the plain language of the statute.
I'm going to go to Mr. Traver. Ms. Baptiste-Perez, you did ask the question. I didn't know if you want to respond to what Mr. Anastasia said before I go back around, or are you good?
Just a point of order. Normally with Robert's rules, you go around the individuals that haven't spoken yet, and Mr. Yellen has his hand up. But that I'm done.
Okay.
My question's been answered.
Okay. Mr. Traver?
I again want to assert I agree with what y'all have said with regard to the timing. I believe that what we were told by the Secretary of State's office, this woman Heather, and I think that you can't take my word for this. You need to do that extra day of research that Mr. Anastasi just referred to confirm this. She was asserting that it has to be that his decision to change parties is irrelevant to the question of at hand here, that as far as they're concerned, he was elected a minority party candidate. And so we are obligated to fill this position with a Democrat, as far as they're concerned. So I believe that needs to be confirmed with the Secretary of State's office and whatever legal research you feel comfortable doing to confirm that position. So I think that's the course we need to proceed on. I would point out that I believe we then hit further complications if we think about doing anything different. And those further complications are, what minority party are we filling this with? Because Joe was not elected a Republican, were you? You were elected a Working Family Party. And I don't know how many members of the Working Family Party exist in Bridgeport. And if we don't fill them with a Working Family Party, is it Republican or Independent, or what other independent, non-democratic party do we fill it with?
Right. Point of
So we start
point of information.
Yes.
If I may, Mr. Traber. It's irrelevant what party they, if in fact, what I am asserting is correct, there is no reason that any party or unaffiliated party could be elected to the seat, because that's how it was advertised last time. It doesn't have to be Working Family. It doesn't have to be my party. My party is irrelevant, besides the fact that it was a minority party and that I'm now a Democrat. That's the only reference. So if we're going to have to fill it with a minority party, it could be any minority party or an unaffiliated candidate, correct?
Yes. Could I just make one other comment with regards to what the Secretary of State's office is saying? First of all, I'm actually pleased that they take a position on something. Very often the Secretary of State's office will say, that's a question for your local attorneys. You've got to ask them. But that's good. I am looking, and I think we may have talked about this section earlier. I'm looking at 9167 subsection D, which seems to say the same thing as the charter with one exception. Again, subsection D says, if an unexpired portion of a term is to be filled at the same time as a full term, the unexpired term shall be deemed to be filled before the full term. That doesn't apply. But then it goes on to say, at such time as the minority representation provisions of this section become applicable to any board, commission, committee, or body, any vacancy thereafter occurring, which is to be filled by appointment, shall be filled by the appointment of a member of the same political as that of the vacating.
You froze up, Mark.
It sort of says this may actually trump the 6 versus 9 concern, because it seems to be saying that it'll be filled by the appointment as the vacating member. So this appears to be language to prevent the type of manipulation that, and again, I'm not suggesting any of that's occurring in this instance. I have no position on that. It's simply that subsection D of 9167A may say that what happens with Mr. Sokoloff is irrelevant, because you still go back in filling a vacancy to the party held by the member. So that would be what we want to confirm with the Secretary of State's office, that that's what they're relying on, subsection D. And I'm sure Floyd and I can find some time to place that call tomorrow. You say it's somebody by the name of Heather, so somebody indicated that.
Yes, I'm told she handles Bridgeport electoral issues.
We used to always call Ted Bromley, who is an attorney who you probably heard the name, but he retired. He was there for as long as I've been with the city, and he had this stuff down cold. But having said that, I'm sure Heather's equally competent, and I just would be very uncomfortable and irresponsible to tell you we have a definitive position without placing that call.
I'm asking you to.
Okay.
I agree.
Okay, Mr. Sokolovic? You're muted.
Yeah, and I would ask that before you make that call, you keep in fact the decision that was already made by the Secretary of State in Jackson case, and particularly number 16 on the case, where Says, going down, when a member of a board files an application for transfer of party enrollment under General Statute 9-5.
Joe, we can't hear you.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
That's
Hello?
it, yeah.
Okay, now, under 16 in the Jackson case, back in, I don't remember the time, I'll give you the date in a minute, and I think Ms. Brown forwarded it to you. You're looking at, when a member of a board files an application for transfer of party enrollment under 9-59 for purposes of minority representation under General Statutes 9-67A, I think that's subsection G, such person is counted as a member of his new party 3 months after filing his application for party enrollment. Consequently, under the General Statutes 9-161A, subsection B, in the facts presented, if one of the 7 members of the Democratic Party resigns, the appointing authority may not appoint a member of the Democratic Party to fill the vacancy. The vacancy occurred 5 months after the transfer of party enrollment, and therefore the elected member who switched parties would be considered a member of the new party for purposes of General Statutes 9167A, subsection G, and it goes on for a little more.
Okay.
So I think that's the relevant portion that you need to bring up with the Secretary of State.
Absolutely. No, I was that a Judge Bellis decision? Does it say?
I don't think so.
No.
I believe it, the thing is, I could give you the exact file number. It's in the matter of a complaint of Karen Jackson of Bridgeport. There's 2 of them. File number 2015-096 and file number 2016-048.
Right. I don't mean to.
And this was by order of the commission, Salvatore A. somebody.
Sounds like an SEEC decision.
Yeah, not a court case.
One of those cases was Judge Bellis. The other 2 I thought were SCEC.
Yeah. All right. Well, I've got a couple of emails here from Ms. Brown, and I'm just trying to see which is which. I see one email has 2 attachments. The first attachment is a proposed timeline, and then the second attachment is 9167A. That does not have any cases in it. The second case does not. Let me go to my spam again, because I don't have.
That's the only email that was forwarded to the board. So I only sent you what was in the attachment.
That's okay. Then whatever board member Sokoloff is citing,
Sokolovic. Yep.
Sokolov, I apologize, sir. If you could forward that to the chairperson or directly to me, we'll certainly want to be cognizant of that. But I don't have that yet.
Mr. Anastasi, it's multiple cases in one referral.
That's fine as long as I get it.
No, I think that Bobby did.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah,
yes, I have.
It's
I
3
have
cases
2
attached to one email.
yeah, it's all in one. But
All right.
Mrs.
Well,
Okolovic can feel free to forward it to you, maybe just a document in itself.
I only have an email with 2 attachments. Each one is 2 pages in length. The other email I have has no attachments. Now, that does not mean that there's not something that's still coming through, but
Okay.
I'll take it from anybody because
Okay.
the more information, the better.
Joe will send it to you. Miss Baptiste Perez.
Equally important, maybe Floyd has it from you. You don't have it?
No, I've only got the one email.
Yeah.
With our opinion from 2019, a timeline, and then a picture of, I don't know, it's in Spanish. I can't really.
I'm sorry, Mr. Anastasi, can I get your email? I could forward that right away.
Sure. It's MARK.ANATASI.
Okay, I got it. It popped up.
Okay. Miss Baptiste Perez.
This may be helpful for Mark and Floyd. It's old though. It's Grotus versus Burns. It's 190 Connecticut 39. And so it's a 1983 Connecticut, I have Lexus. So Lexus 500.
Can you just get, it's 190 Connecticut 39?
Yes, and it's 1983.
What's the name again?
Grotus versus Burns. But I did want to make this is just a suggestion to bypass this, is that if as a board we want to expedite this process before Mr. Sokolovic's time vests, then that is worthy of discussion now to avoid the potential headache later. And then if there is an answer, we know that in the future, because at this point we know we're not immune to vacancies on the board, but we can actually make the decision now whether we want, because we had over, what was it, like 14 or 15 applicants for the prior Democratic seat, and they all came in pretty fast, that if, I'm throwing this idea out there, but maybe I should just make it as a motion, and that we move to, and we can discuss further the details, is that we move to appoint a Democrat for Mike Macarone's vacant seat, and that we do so within the next 14 days before by August 7th, 2023. And then that's it's been moved and it's been seconded. I think at this point we can discuss the content. We would need to have the application up and available by tomorrow, ideally, or have the applicants be able to drop it off in person. And we would need to set a date where we can conduct interviews with all the applicants that come in, so that way we can make a decision by the 7th of August.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on this item? It's been seconded.
Quick question. What if we don't make a decision by then? Say we have all the applicants on whatever date is proposed, and we cannot get a majority of the board to decide on that day, and then we would have to have that question answered definitively by then, because we would have to reissue the application if it's in opposition. So we got to be sure we could get somebody that day. I'm not saying whether I agree with the motion or not, but that's just a consideration I'd like to raise.
Yeah, Mr. Anastasio and I will work on that contingent. And I think keep it simple makes sense, Ms. Baptiste Perez.
Nope, I wholeheartedly agree. We keep it simple. I would need to pull up the language that we used when we marketed Erica's seat, the seat that robbed Phil. And then we just need to kind of come up with an immediate timeline.
Yeah. If everyone could look at the calendar, like pull up your calendar so we could discuss that. So obviously, to the point, we want to make sure that it's filled before the 8th, correct? All right, so we need to have interviews or applications sent in to set interviews. What are the dates we have in mind? Yes, Miss Baptiste Perez.
Okay, assuming that we have a link available for applicants to submit starting tomorrow, we give 5 calendar days. So that's the 28th, the 29th, the 30th, the 31st, and the 1st. So they have by the 1st to apply or drop an application in person at the office of the superintendent.
Okay.
That gives us 2 days, I would say. So by the 2nd, we review the applications, and then we conduct interviews either on the 3rd, which is a Thursday, or the 4th. And then we make a decision Monday the 7th.
Any other thoughts to that timeline? I think it's pretty reasonable. Mr. Traber, you did have your hand up. Is it about the timeline?
No, it was actually, I'm in agreement with everything. That's fine.
Okay. Is there anyone else have any suggestions towards this timeline? I'm going to just ask that Tim, who is keeping notes, I'm also keeping notes, but Tim, if you could just make sure that the template that we use for Ms. Castillo is a template that we're going to use for Mr. Macaron seat, and that the dates that we're looking to have applications submitted by, which is the 1st, correct, Ms. Baptiste Perez?
Yes.
And then interviews would either be on the 7th.
No, interviews will either have to be on
Oh,
Thursday the 3rd or Friday the 4th. I'm open and available either days.
Okay. 3rd or the 4th.
Quick point of information, we need one change to the language to include that it's now 2-year seat until, not till the next election. So the language does have to be moved a little bit.
You have that, Mr. Tim?
Yes, I have that. Yes.
Okay.
Say
so
that again. Say that again.
that it's a 2-year seat. So making it clear.
Because right, because Ms. Castillo's read until the next election or what.
Oh.
But that's no
Okay.
longer going to
Yes.
be read. So
Right.
Okay.
It would
Can
be
I ask a
until
quick-
it would be until the
2025
2025
election.
municipal.
You have that, Tim?
Yes, I have it. Yes.
Okay. So then I'll make sure that we have a meeting scheduled for the 7th. But what I want to do is have clarity, because we already know that the Democratic seat tends to fill up quick. And we know that there could be a number of individuals that apply. So are we saying that we're going to do interviews on both the 3rd and the 4th? Or what are we saying out to Ms. Baptiste Perez's point? Go ahead, Ms. Baptiste Perez.
Oh, I think it's possible for us to get it done in one day.
Got it.
In terms of ground rules for the interview, I think it could be much efficient, as well as just being conscious of feedback, is that all candidates, if we have it at Central again, in the back room where we delegate or when we meet in our executive session, candidates don't get to hear the questions as an interviewee is being interviewed at that time. But I think it's possible we did 15 interviews, and I believe it was under 3 hours. So I think we can get it done in one day and be able to deliberate so we can have a definite choice by the 7th.
Okay, so could we aim for the 3rd? I know Fridays can be difficult for people. So is the 3rd okay with everyone to have the interviews, the 3rd? I'm seeing no objections. Okay, Mr. Benahan, yes?
If we do it, August, like you said, the 3rd, we don't know how many
Can you
people.
say it? I can't hear you.
You say, for the 3rd,
The 3rd, that Thursday?
but we don't know exactly how many people they're gonna apply for, right?
Right, but what we're saying is we potentially believe that we can complete all of them on the 3rd.
I didn't hear you very clearly, Ms. Brown. Say it again?
We're saying that the 3rd will be feasible to do all of the interviews.
So just in case we got 20 people, we interview the 20 people.
20 people it is. All right. Mr. Traber, your hand is up. Is it to this question?
It was to this process.
Okay.
One, I want to make sure I understood Ms. Baptiste Perez a moment ago, because I had the same reaction when I interviewed. You said we're going to put them in the back room when we do the questions, Ms. Baptiste Perez, or vice versa?
I believe it's best that we put candidates in the back room where they're not hearing the interview questions.
No, I could not agree more. I found that very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Very uncomfortable. I was taken aback sitting there listening to everybody answer the same questions. If you recall, I was answering them before you asked them, because I had listened to them so much. I sort of knew what was going to be asked and just chomping at the bit to get the answers out. So I think that's just, yes, I would agree with that. And Albert, I think we need to hold, I think what Mr. Benahan raises is correct, that we need to agree that we're gonna hold Friday as a backup if we get
We
a
can,
huge number of applicants. He's correct. We should have that as a backup. But let's hope that we don't, that we can, because I think Ms. Baptiste Perez is correct. We had 14 before and we got it done in one night. We should be able to do this in one night. Let's hope we
So-
can do it again in one night.
so,
But Friday should be held as a backup and in case we have to use it.
So what I would say to that, and board members was a part of the interview for the recess seat that we had to, was it the recess seat before, obviously it was Erica's seat, that we did have it in there where individuals who would be applying that they did, it could either be one date or the other date, depending on how many applicants applied. It was some type of language in there because we brought this up before, and I think we had a cap at maybe a certain amount that will lead into the following day if we needed to. I think that language should be added back. That's just my thoughts. I saw Mr. Sokolovic's hand and then Mr. Benahan. Go ahead.
Yeah, as far as the back room thing, if we're doing a meeting in public, we would have to vote to go into executive session to exclude the public from it, and then people would have to be able to hear what's going on in the questioning process. Because if we don't vote for executive session, it's a public meeting. I mean, you're talking about I know you're talking about holding people outside, but are we going to take away their phones so they can't watch the live stream? Or is there going to be a motion for executive session, which we all know I'm always against, but I could be outvoted for that.
Hold on, Ms. Baptiste Perez. Mr. Benahan, then Ms. Baptiste Perez. Go ahead,
I can give the floor to Ms. Baptiste. You can go first
Okay.
before me.
Ms. Baptiste Perez.
These are applicants that are applying to work with us for the promotion of the educational success of our students. If we've asked them to turn off their cell phone device and to respect the process and they refuse to do so, it would be reflective on us if we have a candidate that won't listen or follow directions and then we vote for them to be in. I think it's a simple request. It's a bit of a respect to the applicants. When I worked in human resources and there were applicants in a room and they were being tested, we asked cell phones to be cut off so that way they can look up answers. I think it's not a hard request. And if they want to insist on watching on YouTube, I think it would be foolish of us, if we know about it, to then vote for that particular person. So I think we can make the simple request when they're in the back rooms to not listen and not to watch live. And then let their decisions be part of their fate should they choose not to listen. And so it's a glass room too, so it won't be that difficult to see if someone's watching it on YouTube. And so I
Gotcha,
think that's just one way to handle it very practically. And we ask that it's turned off, they're not on their cell phones, and that they don't convene. And then once one person's done with their interview, we ask them to leave. And by the time it's time for us to discuss in session, the room's empty and we can move forward.
Okay, Mr. Benahan.
Yeah, I agree with what Ms. Baptiste said about everything, and I'm okay with that. But I didn't catch it because the connection it was not very well because it's raining very bad here. But we're gonna receive all the resume and everything when exactly? Because I don't, whoever applied for it, so that's to receive the resume, and then the day we're gonna interview, we know who we're gonna interview. We don't waste too much time because we don't know exactly how many people we're gonna have. Are we gonna receive the resume and everything days before?
So the goal is, if the resumes are supposed to be submitted by the 1st, we'll work with the office to make sure that they're uploaded to the portal no later than, whatever the cutoff time that we set for the 1st, so that we'll have it and have that the 2nd to review and go over it by the 3rd. So I believe that's how we did it in the past. There was a cutoff time, and I'll work with central office to make sure that they're all uploaded so that we won't have that, shuffling of who submitted what, or if anything came in late.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair.
The chair?
Yes, go ahead, Tim.
Yes, and just to clarify, yes, we wait until we verify their party before we submit it to the board.
Yes. All right, and then what I'm gonna do is, Tim, if you could just do us a favor and just run back the information for this particular process. So if you could just want to make sure that you have it all. So it's gonna start when?
Yes. So the application's in. It is going to be ending on the 1st. The interview process is going to be the 3rd. We're going to change language to state for the we're going to use Erica Castillo's last posting. We're going to change the portion where it says that it's going to be up for the next election to a 2-year period, and then the party has to be Democrat. Did I capture everything?
I believe so.
Just, if I could, through the chair, just a couple of minor suggestions for you to consider. The first is, there's no harm in saying a 2-year term, but I think you want to indicate in parentheses the 2025 municipal elections. And the second thing is, in calculating whether someone's a Democrat, you really have to look forward to what you anticipate your vote date is. Because if somebody has recently become a Democrat, you're going to have to look at whether they'll have been a Democrat for 90 days when it hits your vote date in order to qualify them. There may be an applicant, for instance, who recently became a Democrat, and they may not have their 90 days up today, but they might have it up by August 6th or August 7th. I have no idea if it's a moot point, but when you check their status, somebody's got to check with the registrars to make sure that if they're newly affiliated as a Democrat, that they've held that position for the requisite amount of time. Thanks.
Yes, correct, sir.
Just a quick point on that, Mr. Anastasi. Would you be referring to somebody who is changing parties, not a newly registered voter?
Correct.
Right.
That's, yep.
So there could be
Tim?
somebody who has been a Democrat for less than 90 days because they've just registered as a voter.
I believe, quite frankly, that the look back only applies if you're changing parties.
A change. Yeah.
Yes.
And just clarification on that, because what we do is we do check with the register of voters on whether their party is based on the deadline. So do they have to be a Democrat based on the deadline of the 1st, or is it the date of appointment?
I think it would be the date of appointment. So you need to project when you're going to vote. It's probably hypothetical that anybody's going to fit in that 2-day window or 3-day window. But it would be best not to try to argue that because somebody wasn't a Democrat on the date they applied, they only have to really be a Democrat on the date they're appointed.
That's correct.
Mr. Sokolovic?
Yeah, real quick, I'm not sure if I missed it, but did we mention also that unaffiliated has no time limit, no time constraint?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, and we added language to the posting to confirm that.
Thank you.
All right, and then the other thing we do need to, if we're going to keep the 7th as the meet-in date, to Mr. Anastasi's point. Anybody thoughts on calendar-wise?
What was the question?
So Mr. Anastasi's question was that we want to make sure that whatever meeting date we choose doesn't limit someone from being able to, whenever they be transferred over or became a Democrat, doesn't interfere with our meeting date. So we may need to push it out as long as we're in the window that we set. So I guess we need to look at our calendars to think what will be an ideal time to do that, to do the meeting. If the 7th is too early.
The meeting has to be done on August 7th. We get the I went through and I was listening to Tim, so I was coming up with a timeline. So tomorrow, July 28th, is the publication of the vacancy. We're looking for applicants. By August 1st, 5 p.m., that's the close deadline. That gives August 2nd to confirm whether the applicants have been Democrats for at least 90 days or by the time of appointment will have been a Democrat for 90 days, so it vests. And then August 3rd is the interviews. And then we have not gone through with a time and date for that, but I also have August 4th as overflow interviews.
Okay, I have a question. I'm with you on the 7th. I believe we're gonna find out tomorrow how hard and fast that date is from another point of view, but I'm with you on the 7th. We're moving to do this by the 7th. And I agree with you. But there's a chance we're gonna find out from Mr. Dugas or Mr. Anastasi tomorrow that deadline doesn't have to be the 7th. I'm not suggesting we change anything if we find that out, but we may find out from them tomorrow that the deadline doesn't have to be the 7th because it's irrelevant. Mr. Sokolovic's vesting on the 8th. But we are moving on the assumption that the 7th is when we want to have it done. I get that, and I'm comfortable with that. I want to be clear about the vesting for the candidates. It is 90 days a Democrat if they are switching from another party. It is 60 days a Democrat if they're an unaffiliated voter who registered as a Democrat. And it is no time if they are a newly registered Democrat. Am I correct?
Or unaffiliated. Or unaffiliated.
No,
So an unaffiliated person.
And in order to
can
vote,
register at any point.
unaffiliated has to be 60 days prior to an event, if they're voting. So I don't know. I'm asking sort of as a question to Mr. Anastasi or Mr. Dugas, if those same electoral laws would apply to something like this.
I don't believe so. I think 9167A only talks about switching parties. I would also urge you, I heard everything you said and it makes sense. And despite the fact that Floyd and I will make a call tomorrow and that it would be beneficial to everybody to get an answer sooner rather than later, based on that call, there may be some more legal research.
You froze
Yes.
up.
Froze on my side, okay.
I would urge you to avoid the problem by sticking with your time frame. And I want to assure you, try to get a definitive answer to this question while the Secretary of State's office is focused on it. But I can't guarantee you're going to get a definitive answer tomorrow. So I would urge you to try to avoid the issue entirely by sticking to this timeline.
Yeah, I'm not arguing anything different. I'm just saying we may find we got more time, but you're also saying you don't think those timelines are, so the Democrat for 90 days period for everybody or 90-60?
I don't think the 60 comes into play, but that's something we'll take a look at, and Floyd may have a difference of opinion on that. I think that's in terms of capacity to vote in a primary as opposed to your party affiliation for purposes of an appointment. But again, you hit me with a good question that, I haven't had a chance to look at.
No, I understand your point.
Okay, so are there any further comments as far as the timeline? Are we all agreeing with the 7th?
Yep.
For the meeting date?
Yep.
Okay. So Tim, you have, go ahead, Tim.
Yes, 2 questions that I have. So for someone who is unaffiliated still by the 1st, do I hand them in their resumes as well with the assumption that they're going to change by the 7th?
I don't think I understand.
So if someone's unaffiliated and is applying for this vacancy, do we still give them to you guys to interview, even though they're not Democrat at the time of the interview? And then but they can possibly change by the 7th. or do we just say if you're not a Democratic by the first, which we've done in the past, we've excluded them?
That's probably your call, because nobody has an entitlement to this position. Arguably, you're not even obligated to interview for this position. It's you set the rules for how to fill the position. And, you know, it sounds like you're doing a deliberative, professional process, but sometimes when vacancies are filled, it's simply done on, a less formalistic manner. I'll put it that way.
Ms. Baptiste-Perez?
I thinking about just putting some thought into what Tim mentioned. I think we should include that if you are a newly registered voter or unaffiliated voter switching to the Democratic Party, you must have registered as a Democrat by August 1st. You must register as a Democrat. Maybe I should say before August 1st. So then that way, when we're confirming, it's already there. I'm not too sure how fast it is, but by the time the applicants are in, they all need to be Democrats. Not say, oh, by the 7th, I'm going to. No, you need to be a Democrat by the time you apply.
I would agree with that.
And that way we don't have to take somebody's word or extend our day or overflow to Friday for someone. No, have it done.
Yes. Yes. No playing around there. When the deadline hits, they're a Democrat.
Yes.
Any further thoughts or comments?
Last comment.
So we need a motion?
We have a motion. Can we call the question?
Everybody's sleeping immediately. This cafe is closed until
I just have one more thing. Are we going to hold interviews in person? Do we need to choose the date and location now?
Thought we did.
Okay, so are we going to keep it at 6 o'clock at Central High School? All right.
That works with me. Anybody else?
Yeah, does it work? Tim, could you find out if that works with the facilities? Make sure they're not doing the floors or anything? Buildings.
Yes, I can find that out tomorrow morning. I'll find that out tomorrow morning.
I don't, 6 o'clock Thursday, if it's not Central, some other location, doesn't matter to me. Whatever facility says is the most reasonable, as long as it's air conditioned.
And Chair, regarding the public notice that we have to fill for the, we have to do the public notice for the Connecticut Post. So would you guys want that to go out tomorrow, if tomorrow is possible, or if they say it's too late for tomorrow? Is it Saturday? Is it Sunday? What day is that for you guys?
Tomorrow if possible, if not Saturday.
Tomorrow is possible. Say it again, Ms. Baptiste-Perez?
You guys agree?
Tomorrow if possible, if not Saturday.
Yes.
Definitely on the website by tomorrow.
Yes, it will be on the website by tomorrow, yes.
Yes, and I believe since we're only just changing the template, we should be, changing the template. Okay.
Now you're breaking up, Miss Brown.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
I was saying, because we're changing just a few things within the template, I think tomorrow should be reasonable.
Yep.
Mr. Finnegan?
Yes, Madam Chair, can someone or you, Christine Baptiste, they can make a report exactly about date and time, because I know people that test me, they're a little confused and they listen. So can we have a report exactly when they start, when they're gonna finish, same and die, please? Somebody can give a report about the end, about how it's gonna be everything, all the process.
Oh.
If you mind, Miss Christine Baptiste, if you can do,
You want me to just do a recap?
Yeah, please.
Okay.
Ms. Baptiste-Perez, can you do that? I'm driving, so I don't want to go in and out.
Yeah, that's why I asked, because you caught in Miss Brown. That's why. Thank you.
Okay, so tomorrow, July 28th, we will have publication of the seat available on our website. We will also post it with the Connecticut Post if available, or it will be posted on the Connecticut Post newspaper by Saturday, July 29th. All applications are due by August 1st at 5 p.m. Interview, if the candidate pool exceeds 15 applicants, then we shall make applicants should be prepared to interview on Friday, August 4th. So I think that part we didn't really discuss too clearly, but if it exceeds 15, then we'll have the overflow of applicants in the order that they applied, interview on Friday, August 4th. After interviews are completed, the board will meet in executive session, and by Monday, August 7th, we'll have a meeting. And this meeting, will we have it in person or will it be remote? Oh, we should have it in person, so we just swear them in there. We'll also have a meeting, if possible, Tim, see if Central is going to be available on August 6th as well for 6 o'clock.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm just going to backtrack a little bit. August 4th is overflow interviews in case we have more than 15 candidates. August 7th is the appointment, and that will be held at 6 o'clock at Central High School. Okay, and then just for a little bit more details, what you were asking about, applicants, newly registered voters or unaffiliated voters must be registered as a Democrat by the time they apply for the role. And that was the main concern that was pointed out. And then for anyone that is switching parties, they must be a Democrat for at least 90, Democrat for at least 90 days by the time of appointment. So by the time they're appointed the role, August 7th, they must have been a Democrat for at least 90 days if they're switching parties. So from Republican to Democrat, August 7th, they have to have been 90 days. If not, we'll move on to the next qualified person. But we'll have all of that verified hopefully by the 2nd. And hopefully we didn't have this issue before, but it's better to be prepared just in case.
Yep. Thank you so much, Ms. Baptiste. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All right. Is there any other thoughts or comments on this? No? So hearing none, Ms. Tim, you have
We have to vote on it, Ms. Brown.
yes. Would someone like to make the motion?
We have a motion, we have a motion and it was seconded already.
This
Call
was
the question.
discussion on it. We can vote on it now.
So all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion carries. All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So move.
Moved by Ms. Baptiste, second by did you second it, Mr. Bedan?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
you did.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, thank you for everyone joining the meeting. Thank you, Mr. Dugas and Mr. Anastasi for joining us tonight. Everyone have a great night.
Have a good
Thank
night.
you,
You're welcome.
gentlemen.
Good night,
Night,
everyone.
guys.
God bless you all.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, John. I don't know, it was,
Good night.